Freeway ramp meters make freeways flow better. But there's one problem. You're on the city street getting on the on-ramp. That means you have to wait.
A minute? 2 minutes? This is the Twin Cities. Those are rookie numbers. How long are you willing to wait to have a free-flowing freeway?
A few years ago, we talked about these special stoplights on freeway on-ramps that engineers call ramp meters. States all across the country turn these on during rush hour to help drivers merge more smoothly into busy rush hour traffic. And it squeezes a little bit more out of the freeway before it all jams up. Back in the 1990s, Minnesota's ramp meters were so aggressive at protecting freeway flow, sometimes you'd have to wait 15 minutes to get on the freeway. And as you can imagine, that made a lot of drivers pretty angry about it, even with faster freeways.
This is the story of how Minnesota built over 400 ramp meters and how one lawmaker got so angry, he got them all turned off, at least for a little while.
From WBBM Radio News.
Even back in the 1960s, Chicago traffic was, Chicago traffic.
America's very first freeway ramp meter was here along Chicago's Eisenhower Expressway. Back in the 1960s, a professor from California was visiting when he noticed a problem. Sometimes the freeway is still moving even though it's crowded, but then a whole bunch of cars all try to get on the freeway at the same time.
And drivers on the freeway have to start pressing the brake to make room to let them in. And that's what causes a freeway traffic jam. But when cars merge one at a time, drivers on the freeway were less likely to hit their brakes. A concept that's a little bit difficult to wrap your head around when it's pen and paper, which he certainly did. Today we have software programs that can show this to us. You can see how the freeway's heavy but still moving until this group of cars all get a left turn arrow and try to get on the freeway at the same time. The first car has no problem merging in, but everybody in the group behind him, there's too many of them trying to all merge in at the same time, so everybody on the freeway has to start jamming on their brakes. But people behind them slow down, and people behind them slow down, and drivers in the right lane go, "I've had enough of this," and change lanes, which makes the other lane slow down. And it creates this wave of brake lights that starts moving backwards through the traffic. Engineers call this a shock wave, which looks really cool on software and a little bit scary in the textbook. If you know what makes a shock wave, you know how to keep them from happening.
What if he hired a police officer to turn a red and a green light on and off every 10 seconds or so to regulate the flow of cars entering the freeway?
He tried it, and it worked exactly how he hoped. Smoother merges, fewer cars on the freeway hitting the brakes. He had just invented managing the merge, which, if we look at the software side by side, dumping a whole bunch of cars as a group onto the freeway shocks all the freeway drivers into hitting their brakes, and just about the time they recover, another group dumps back on the freeway. But if you pepper a car out one at a time every 10 seconds or so, it never creates a shock in the first place.
So in 1965, the state of Illinois let him double down, and they built the first ever computerized automated ramp meters on the westbound lanes here of Interstate 290. And if you look at that equipment, it looks like that might still be some of the original light fixtures and things from 1965. I don't know. Drivers on Chicago's expressways were saving 10 minutes a day
without pouring a single square foot of new highway lanes.
So states all over the country started copying what Chicago had done here.
No place more aggressively than Minnesota.
As early as 1970, engineers for Minnesota's highway department put in 6 ramp meters here on Interstate 35E, just north of downtown St. Paul. And after switching the meters on, engineers saw traffic bumping up 5 miles per hour on average, and crashes dropping by 25%.
But ramp meters only help with merging. They'll continue to dump cars onto a freeway that's totally full. And by the 1990s, some engineers at MnDOT wondered, what if the meters didn't do that? Lots of cities use meters to make that merge flow better, but what if we use the meters for a second reason? Protect the freeway.
These meters regulate how many cars can even get onto the freeway to keep the flow of the freeway flowing.
There's only so much space on the freeway before there's physically too many cars, both for the physical body of the car, but also the following distance we human drivers need between us and the car in front of us. Engineers call this jam density. We start hitting our brakes, not because somebody's bad at merging, but because there's no room for them to merge in. So what if instead of using ramp meters just to help cars merge smoothly, we used ramp meters as a guard gate, prevent too many cars from getting onto the freeway in the first place? If the freeway has too many cars here, we'll go back one freeway on-ramp and use the meters to not let so many cars onto the freeway. Never let an on-ramp push the freeway over that jam density limit. It's actually a pretty elegant idea. Only downside, cars on the on-ramp are going to have to wait longer. A lot longer.
Traffic flow theory is PhD level stuff, so I can understand why it's difficult to communicate. But all drivers were seeing is that they were having to wait at the meters longer than their peers in other cities. Drivers in Chicago, for instance, would have about 10 seconds maximum between green lights for each car. Drivers in LA, about 15 seconds, which is the national average for a maximum. But drivers here in the Twin Cities sometimes had a wait time of up to 40 seconds per green for each car.
And that's not 40 seconds total, that's 40 seconds per car.
That line can back way up. Every on-ramp looks like a Chick-fil-A drive-through. I know there's Minnesota Nice, but they've got their limits.
It was only looking at the main line of the freeways. It was not looking at what the conditions were on the ramp.
Garrett Schreiner tells me MnDOT at the time had great equipment to watch the freeway, nothing to look at the ramp.
You know, I think the longest one that was recorded was 15 minutes of people waiting.
You can imagine that would make some people avoid the freeway altogether or just run right through the red light. And for what? See, that's the catch-22 of managing the flow. When it works, the freeway's moving just fine, which makes you wonder why you're waiting so long at a ramp meter.
So in 1999, there was a state lawmaker quite a ways south of here who felt ramp meters were a scam. And he told that to MnDOT, and they said, no, they work. And he said, no, just trust me. Like, turn them off for a month, and you'll see that they don't work. And MnDOT's like, no, we're keeping them on. But he was so committed to this crazy idea that he brought it here to the state capitol in St. Paul, and tried to get some of his fellow lawmakers on board with the idea.
And they all passed a law requiring Minnesota's Department of Transportation to study the effectiveness of ramp meters. From Labor Day to the middle of October, they measured as much as they could of the status quo with the meters turned on. And then, on October 16th, they pushed the big red button. This video is not sponsored by Bargain Help, the AI therapist in your phone for users at any price point.
Ice cream turns frowns upside down.
It was October 16th, 2000.
Today's hit music, 40 minutes commercial free starts now. KDWB, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
430 ramp meters to get on the freeway, and engineers had to turn them all off. And for 5 weeks, a consulting firm and MnDOT engineers measured everything they could.
So it's the next February, 2001, the third-party consultant drops on the desk the study results.
Freeway sections that kept up about 60 miles an hour with the ramp meters on saw speeds collapse when the ramp meters were turned off. System-wide, meters off meant a loss of 7 miles per hour on the freeway.
And it shows Minnesota freeways lost nearly 10% of its capacity with the meters turned off. It means 1 in 10 cars trying to get on the freeway, there wasn't room for one of them.
The big one that really shows the managing the merge is the 200% increase in sideswipe crashes. Just people not having gaps to fit into, or you got 10 cars bumper to bumper coming on from the ramp and not knowing who has the right of way.
And crashes overall were up 27%. So instead of the city having 4 freeway crashes a day, they'd end up with more like 5. Turning the meters off also made smog emissions go up because you had more stalled traffic, but fuel consumption went down because people weren't driving as far.
I mean, in the world of traffic engineering, this was just huge. Most traffic studies are very limited. They look at a small area, maybe a big area, but in a really limited way. But this was every single ramp meter in one of America's largest metropolitan areas for 5 weeks.
The study also showed that ramp meters tend to benefit people with long commutes a whole lot more than people who live in the city and only drive a short way.
I mean, is it better than non-metering? Probably, because if you can get the freeways better utilized, then that means that there's less traffic on the arterials.
David Levinson was a grad student in Minnesota when this happened, which let him research a second question.
How much do you want to penalize some people?
A question he explored 23 years ago.
If I'm doing that at the expense of making somebody else wait 20 minutes, that's a problem. Now the question is, do I make them wait 10 minutes so you can drive at 65 miles an hour, or do I make them wait 5 minutes so you can drive at 55 miles an hour?
Fairness issues all around anything you ever do in transport, because it's a spatial problem, and space is not fair.
It poses an important question for transportation engineers. Equity. The idea that we all are citizens, we all pay taxes, so our transportation system shouldn't benefit just like a small group of people. It should try to benefit everybody as best we can. But that gets difficult to calculate.
If you live outside of the system, you can get on the freeway without waiting at a ramp meter at all because the ramp metering system is only in a specific geographical area. As the congestion increases as you go towards the city center, the system becomes a little bit more congested. So if you live near those bottlenecks, you're going to be metered more, and you're going to have a longer delay to enter onto the freeway.
That means the person only driving from here to here has to sit at the ramp and wait for the guy driving from way out here to way over there. The guy driving the long trip gets a nice, speedy freeway commute, and you're stuck waiting at a meter even though you're taking a short trip. Well, I ain't waiting for that, so you jump onto the local streets and try to bypass the freeway entirely. Well, everybody else does the same thing. Now you can't use the freeway, and all your local city streets are busy.
You suffer all of the negative effects of the freeway and you don't get to use it. Doesn't seem fair.
Today's engineers are better at asking this question. One of the ramp meter engineers at the time, again, this was 25 years ago, said, "Oh, if you don't like the long wait, you can change houses or change jobs."
As an engineer, you're supposed to be minimizing total delay or maximizing social welfare. But politicians are elected from districts for precisely the reason of ensuring that there's a lens on equity here. Now, how is the engineer supposed to deal with that? What's the appropriate way to deal with that? And that's a political decision. That's not an engineering decision.
David suggests that one way could be to look at not so much how much time a driver saves or loses waiting on a ramp, but the emotional perception of how much time it felt like they were waiting on the ramp.
Right now, from a direct measurement, you're going to say that they spent 90 seconds on the ramp. And they're going to say, I spent 5 minutes on the ramp. And no set of facts is going to convince them of otherwise because it felt like 5 minutes to them.
He says this kind of emotional measurement is something transit planners already use.
Waiting for a bus is a lot more onerous than riding on a bus. 5 times, sometimes even 9, some sites have gotten 9 times as onerous. Time in motion is fine, and time waiting is really problematic.
After the study was over, Minnesota turned the ramp meters back on, and they've been running their cycle ever since.
How do you bring something back that people actually are going to like?
So in 2002, after the report came out, the Minnesota Department of Transportation started tinkering with the meters to make them a little friendlier.
The ramp meters were very effective, but we needed to look at the traffic on the ramps and the roads leading to the freeway.
And be willing to sacrifice the freeway if the ramp meter was backing way up. And through 2002, installed loops of wire at the bottom of on-ramps so the computer could detect if the line was getting too long.
MnDOT called it their 4-minute promise. No driver here in the Twin Cities would have to wait more than 4 minutes to enter the freeway from a city street, and never more than 2 minutes when switching freeways.
Which shows engineers learned 2 lessons from the Minnesota ramp meter experiment. Oodles of data of how ramp meters do help freeways, but also we can't learn anything from something if we aren't measuring that something. And in engineering, there's a lot of hidden somethings out there.
I mean, I think the important thing is that they recognized that they needed to measure everybody and not just the people on the freeway themselves, right? That was something that they should have seen beforehand, but they didn't.
It's kind of hard to believe that study is nearly a quarter of a century old now. So, time sneaks up on us, I guess. I asked Garrett what the future holds for ramp metering here in the Twin Cities, and he says, really, they've got the system working pretty well. So even with AI and connected autonomous vehicles, it's really more about refinement than it is any new revolutions coming out. So that might mean, as they keep making it work better, managed flow could leak out to other cities, including yours. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
A big thank you to MnDOT's Garrett Schreiner, who I interviewed 4 years ago on Zoom. That's how long it sometimes takes to get these videos made. And thank you to David Levinson as well. Check out his full lecture from 23 years ago. And I'll also put a link in the description to the entire ramp meter study. Subscribe to find new videos. Support to fund new videos.